And good evening, everyone. It is so great to see you and so nice to have you here. My name's Kevin. This is my wife, Lisa, and it's Monday evening, and we're back with another session of Amazing Love. Every Monday night that we do meet together, we always acknowledge the world that we're living in right now, and we acknowledge the fact that, well, life is significantly different than it used to be just a few short weeks ago. And with the pandemic, everything that's going on in the world around us, today we're even extra saddened to hear the news of what's happening in our country, what has happened in the province of Nova Scotia with the mass shooting there. And our hearts are deeply moved and saddened today. I know that we have spent some time in prayer together for the families who are trying to make sense of this really senseless crime. And we have been thinking often about just this terrible news today, but we just thought it wouldn't be right if we didn't acknowledge that right at the beginning of today's session.
Absolutely. It's just heartbreaking, and we lived for 3 years in Halifax, and so we love Nova Scotia deeply, and our hearts are really breaking, and as Kevin said, we've been in prayer and thinking about you all day.
That's very true. So we wish all of you well, wherever you may be. We wish all of you health, of course, and we wish all of you safety. You know, it causes us just to think a little bit as we begin, and we kind of address this every single week too, with such concerns that are going around in the world today, with such bad news that's happening around us, with such instability that's happening around us. Why in the world, every Monday night, are you having something to do with marriage? Why is there a marriage class? There could be many more important things that you could be devoting your time to, Kevin and Lisa, and maybe more important things that you, the viewer, could be devoting your time to. Why in the world is this important? And we kind of stand by this fact that it is actually important. And even today, before we got ready to talk to you tonight, we heard another interesting and alarming stat with regards to marriage. We heard about a Google search.
Apparently, Google search for "I want a divorce" is up 150%. So that's
since the pandemic has begun.
That's a little concerning.
So we are confident, without even looking at your web browser history, that that's not the case for you. And you're here because you believe in a good marriage. You're here because you believe in the person that, even though sometimes it might be difficult to get along with, hey, hopefully none of us have gone that far where we've typed into Google, "I want a divorce," or "How do I get a divorce?" But that being said, look, that's the world we live in, right? And so we go through these times of upheaval, these times of great challenge, and the cracks really start to show, and where they begin to show can be possibly in our marriages.
Yeah,
so we don't want that to happen. And that's the reason we have Amazing Love tonight. That's the reason we talk about these every 7 days, and we hope, we pray, and we wonder even sometimes, hopefully it's helping you. We know it's helping us because we're putting all this work into it, right?
It actually is helping us.
But we hope it's helping you as well. Speaking of what we've done in the last few sessions, actually, I don't think I spoke of it. Having not spoken of what we've done in the last few sessions, let's talk about what we've done in the last few sessions. Kind of, Lisa, would you do just kind of a quick recap? We've now been at this is our 5th week. We've been at this 4 weeks, and the things we've looked at in the last 4 weeks have been?
So we first looked at criticism and talked about changing the you to I, and then we talked about contempt the next week and how that's not a good thing in your marriage, and you want to figure out a way to admire your spouse even when you don't feel like it. We talked about defensiveness, which was a popular one, resonated with pretty much everyone, I think.
That was because of the
props.
I talked
to.
The props we use, defense, right? Don't you think?
Yes, you worked hard on those props. That was awesome. And so we talked about yielding or submission, whichever word you want to use there. And then last week we talked about stonewalling and how that's a really bad thing in a marriage, and that we need to connect with each other even when we don't want to. And if you missed any of these sessions, please go ahead and go to our YouTube channel, and you can watch any of them there anytime. Yeah,
it's a good idea. Before we move off of these, I just want to ask you a quick question. In your opinion, do you think that a person's upbringing or a person's ethnicity or where we come from impacts our view and impacts our marriage in any way?
I think for sure, absolutely. And I mean, we're also all different personalities as well, and there's a lot of diversity in many areas of all of our lives. So that's why we tried to stick to principles. You know, the principles that we've talked about really do cross all cultures. They just might look differently, or how you deal with it might be different. And you know, the illustrations that Kevin and I have shared over the last 4 weeks from our lives, our personal lives, that's maybe not how these things are going to play out in your lives or how you're going to deal with them. But the principles are all the same for all of us, for all humankind, and so we really believe that, and have, yeah. I think, did I answer your question?
I
forget what your question was.
No, absolutely.
We're different. We're all very different, and we don't know each other and how, you know, so.
Yeah, it's just the human condition is two people being married. We are absolutely all very different.
Yes.
We come from different places. We learn marriage differently based on our different parents or the different countries that we come from, whatever. But we kind of stand by this fact that at the bottom of everything, or after everything is sort of peeled away, these fundamental issues impact our marriages negatively, no matter where you come from, no matter how much money you make or don't make, or anything like that.
But that was a good question.
Yeah, so that has been sort of our last 4 sessions. It's time for us to move on to our next session. I say it again, welcome to Amazing Love. It's Monday night, so we need to get a little bit more energy in here. It's Monday, what is it? It's, marriage.
Monday.
Marriage.
Monday.
I can't hear you.
Monday.
Marriage.
Monday.
Yes. And so here we are. Welcome. Good to have you here. Don't know how many people are here. Do you know how many people are here? We've just got over 100 or 130 of you, which is pretty average. Good to have you.
Yeah.
Are you ready? Here's what we need to do. We want to get involved with, have some conversation with you a little bit. We want to do something. So get yourself ready. Maybe you have a pen, a piece of paper. If you don't, get your device ready. That you just have to add something up. We're going to do something just after I introduce what the topic on Amazing Love is all about tonight. And here it is. Are you ready? I know a lot of you know what it is already if you were here last week, because I announced last week that tonight's session is going to be on
intimacy.
Intimacy. What's really funny about last week is I announced that to all of you. I announced it to the world. I announced it to the World Wide Web here on our YouTube streaming. And I forgot to tell Lisa that that's what we're doing tonight. And she sat here just 7 days ago, and I don't know if you saw it. If you go back and rewind the tape, you can probably see that moment where her eyes go bigger. Really, I didn't know that. She didn't say that. Self-controlled, cool as a cucumber.
Oh yeah.
But later I heard, hey, you might want to let me know, buddy, before we start talking about all this kind of stuff. So tonight is about intimacy. Yes, you heard it, friends, and we're going to talk about it here, and we're going to help you with this here. And here is what the main topic is really all about. Pretty cool graphic, huh? Does that look familiar? My feet get cold. I don't like this picture at all. But here's where we're coming from tonight. Intimacy, a marriage essential service.
Love it.
Forgive us for using pandemic
Love
words.
it.
The last 4 weeks was viruses and stuff like that. Well, this week is intimacy is what? It's a marriage essential service. We're going to get around to that. We're going to convince you of that one thing tonight, and that's the only reason we're here.
Yes.
And we'll talk more about intimacy in weeks following, but this point is the main point tonight. So get yourself ready, and here's what we want to do to kick things off. We want you involved in this. We want to start off with an intimacy test. We want you to take an intimacy test, and this is high science right now. I'm just kidding. It's really not. But Lisa's going to help us. She's going to read some questions. How do we do this intimacy test? The people at home need to do what?
Okay, so all
They
you
need
have
to
to
be
do is
prepared for
answer
what?
8 questions.
Okay.
And we're going to read 2 sentences, and you just, for each question, and you just choose one sentence that you prefer over the other.
And we're going to tell you that sentence. We're going to tell you how many points.
Yeah, we'll score as we go along.
How
We'll
many
keep a running
points
total.
are awarded to that sentence?
Okay.
Is this confusing?
Yeah.
Are you confused?
A little bit.
But these people are smarter than us. I bet they're not confused.
Okay, let's just get
one more
right-
time. Here's what we're
Okay.
going to do. You're going to hear 8 questions. Don't think about it too hard. Just react. Just think. Whatever one
Yes.
suits you the best, choose that's the sentence for me, and we're going to tell you to write down either 1 point for that or 2 points for that. And at the end of 8 questions, you're going to add all this up. That's all that's going to happen.
Okay.
Nobody's going to hurt you.
This is lighthearted, so don't get stressed out and don't, overthink it.
Lighthearted, but we're totally going to judge you on it. Here we go.
No, we're not. Okay, with your spouse, do you prefer a candlelight dinner at a 5-star restaurant or a movie at home with popcorn and pajamas?
Give it to them again, a little bit clearer.
That's a tough one. A candlelight dinner at a 5-star restaurant or a movie at home with popcorn and pajamas?
Okay, so if you choose 5-star restaurant, if you chose the first one, give yourself 2 points. If you chose the second one, pajamas and popcorn, give yourself 1 point. Did you get that?
Okay.
Are you ready? Here we go. Question number 2.
Number 2, yeah.
Do you prefer, just react to this, okay? Do you prefer to take a leisurely walk around the neighborhood and talk about life with your spouse? Or do you prefer to sit in a coffee shop with a warm drink and talk about life with your spouse? If you said take a leisurely walk and talk with your spouse, give yourself 1 point. If you said sit in a coffee shop and talk with your spouse, give yourself 2 points. Remember, you're going to have to add these up, and we are not going to email these to you.
And we're
so
not
pay
going to
attention.
repeat them either.
All right, here we go.
Question number 3. Do you like surprise gifts from your spouse, or do you prefer your spouse to help you with your to-do list? Okay. Should I say it again?
Yes, and tell them how many points.
Okay, so if you would like a surprise gift from your spouse, give yourself 2 points. And if you would prefer your spouse to help you with your to-do list, give yourself 1 point.
You know, I'm just thinking, Lisa, what if someone feels like both of them meet their needs? That's cheating, isn't it? You have to choose one.
Yes.
Right. So you don't, okay. All right, did you get that, everybody? Here we go. Let's keep moving. Number 4. Do you prefer, by the way, this is worth 1 point. Do you prefer...
Don't tell them the point.
It doesn't matter. The points are completely random.
Okay.
Don't have your ego wrapped up in points for once in your life.
Okay.
You don't have to win. This is just an intimacy test. Here we go. Do you prefer to receive a handwritten card that you can read from your spouse?
That's nice.
Or do you prefer romantic words while looking deep into each other's eyes? A card that you can read or look into each other's eyes and tell romantic words. If you prefer the card, give yourself 1 point. If you prefer the gazing into each other's eyes, give yourself 2 points. And don't forget the other points that you've already got.
Now, do you prefer to order in a meal with no mess and cleanup?
I'm hungry.
Or would you prefer to cook a meal together in the kitchen?
And if you would
prefer, yes.
All right.
If you would prefer the ordering in a meal with no mess and no cleanup, give yourself 1 point. And if you would prefer to cook a gourmet meal together in the kitchen, give yourself 2 points.
Okay. All right. Let's see if we can land this plane. Here we go. Do you prefer to go for a drive and talk to your spouse? Do you like that? You like driving and talking to your spouse? Or do you prefer to drive, listen to music with no conversation at all? The assumption is your spouse is still in the car with you, the vehicle with you.
Yes,
so
together.
if you prefer to drive and talk to your spouse, that's a 2-pointer. If you prefer to drive and no talking to the spousey, but listening to the radio or the CDs or whatever, that's 1 point. 2 points for driving and talking, 1 point for listening to music.
All right, question number 7. Do you prefer to do a hobby together, or do you prefer to do your hobbies and activities alone and then come back together and enjoy each other later? And if you prefer to do hobbies together, give yourself 2 points. If you prefer to do hobbies alone, give yourself 1 point.
I would like to have a hobby with you. I'd like that. I'd like to have a hobby farm someday. Wouldn't that be fun? No? All right. Keep moving. You don't even dignify that with a response? I don't think a farm is in my future, everybody. All right. Are we down to the last one?
Yes.
Last one. Let's see who's going to win. And once we get done, we'll add all these up. Maybe you throw it in the chats what you scored. Okay, here we go. Do you prefer to have separate jobs and a separate place to work for you and your spouse, and then anticipate seeing each other later at the end of the day? Is that your preference? Or would you prefer to be able to work together all day, every day? So, do you prefer to have two separate jobs where you hit the road in the morning and you come back later? And do you like that? If that's your preference, give yourself 2 points. If you would prefer, doesn't even mean it's the reality of your life, but if you would prefer to work together every day, all day, give yourself 1 point. And now we're done the test, so here's what we want you to do. You please add up your score. I think it's out of how many points, honey? It's 16 points?
16.
16 possible points. Remember, this is an intimacy test. We're going to tell you, based on your answers, how intimate of a person you are, or if you need to double down and really get more intimate in your life. So this is highly scientific. We just thought of it about an hour ago, so let's see how everybody scores.
Okay.
Do you want to drop your score in there?
Tell us the score.
You might feel too vulnerable to do it, but
Yeah.
Anybody got any scores yet? Did we play this?
Mike
We didn't do
Mike
it.
Obey got 14.
Mike Obey
Yeah.
thinks he scored high on the intimacy score counter. We're going to see, Mike.
Rami
We're gonna see.
Carollos got 13 points.
That's Rami is 13.
Yep.
He's always an
Yep.
impressive
Craig
guy.
Henry got 15.
Wow.
Lorna Jabala got 14.
Can you notice a
Anthony
theme
Hall
going
got
on here?
12. Cliff got 10.
Everybody who got
Wow,
scored
Erwin
high.
got 14. Oops,
Can I just
yes,
say this?
yeah.
Everybody who scored high is really an egotist and wants their score out there. Have you noticed that? They think but they don't know how the test is going to turn out. So now they're on pins and needles.
Well,
Now they're
Nadine
chewing their
Joachim
finger.
got 9. so
9.
there's a
Oh,
low one.
Nadine, that's embarrassing. How would you even put that on the World Wide Web?
Oh my goodness.
Anybody else, or should we go to the scores?
Phil got 9.
Yeah.
Craig Young got 11. I'm just randomly.
These are
going
good
over.
people.
Yeah,
These are good people. But
Someone's proud that their husband got 15. So that.
wow.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So, Lisa, babe,
Okay.
let's talk about the intimacy
Yes.
test here. So now it's
All
time
right.
to score the answers. So, what you want to sort of take it from here
Sure.
and give us the scores.
Okay.
If you scored from
If you
0 to
scored-
whatever,
Yeah,
here it
the
is.
first
So
score is-
brace yourself. You might want to jot this down, right?
I don't know if
Because
anyone got.
these are the answers.
Yes.
So this is the scientific test coming true. Don't get mad at us. This is what you need to hear. And after this test is over, I think we can just sign off.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Well, everyone got so high, but
Well,
maybe someone's embarrassed to share they got a low point. So
Right.
if you got 0 to 5 points,
0 to
This is what
0
your
to 5 points. What do they need?
this is what your intimacy test tells you. You need more sex.
Yeah, okay, all right. So I'm more of a joke. You're a straight man, I'm the joker. Okay, so if you scored 0 to 5, what do you need? You need more sex. Remember, this is an intimacy test,
Yes,
right?
yes.
All right, so
So,
see how I
and if
delivered
you-
that?
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
you
you
that
can
there.
do you can
keep
do
going.
the next
No,
one.
keep
too.
going,
Okay,
babe. I trust
if
you.
you
I
scored
believe in
6
you.
to 10,
6 to 10. What do they need, honey?
you need.
Don't stop talking. Keep
But
going.
I gotta see it on the screen.
No, you don't need to see it. You need to look at them.
If you scored 6 to 10, you need more sex.
Oh,
You're-
boy.
You're killing me with your technology.
Yeah,
Okay.
Somebody
and
needs
if
more
you
something.
scored 11 to 15,
you need more sex. Do you see what we're doing here?
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
boy.
So what about those who scored 16?
16, the perfect score, the ultimate score, the score that everyone really wanted to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you scored, whoops, I can't believe I just did that. If you scored 16, here's what we think. You're fine, but you're probably going to have sex tonight. Huh? So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, friends at home.
There we go.
This is really going to stay on the web for the rest of our
Oh,
lives.
true.
Do you know this?
True.
Let's straighten up. Let's fly right here.
Okay.
This is not a joking matter. We're talking
Way
about
to go, everyone.
people's
Thank you
love
so much
lives.
for participating in our silly intimacy test.
There
We
you go.
appreciate your willingness to participate.
And your vulnerability. We
Yes.
appreciate your vulnerability more than we
Please don't get into
appreciate-
any fights over that intimacy test. It was just for fun.
There you go. So here we are tonight. We're back, and it's marriage what?
Monday.
Marriage.
Monday.
Yes, it is. And we're talking about intimacy being a marriage's essential service.
Yes.
And that is, as I've already said, the most important thing that we're going to drill down on for you and to you tonight. And I know what you're thinking. I hear what you're saying. I have the gift, my friends, to know the excuses that are already being made when it comes to our physical intimacy one with another. a lot of us, and we come by this honestly, the world that we live in today really does believe that physical intimacy, I mean, it's a great thing and it drives the world as far as commerce and advertising.
Absolutely.
But once you get into a marriage, what's the big joke? Sex goes where? Away. It kind of
dwindles.
Sex goes to marriage to die. These are some of the things that people in the world, they kind of are coarse and they joke about it. But these kind of jokes come about for a reason.
Yeah.
Now, we know there's so many of you who are on this session who are people of faith, and you know better. You know that's not really true, and you know that's not the way it should be. Yet, if we're really honest, we know that life really begins to move in, it begins to attack us, it begins to take over our life, and usually our physical intimacy suffers and kind of sits by the side of the road, if you will.
And I would just add to that it's not just Kevin who believes that intimacy is a marriage essential. We both do.
Absolutely.
And I know he's joking about me not knowing what we were going to talk about this week, but this is absolutely one of our favorite things to talk about because we believe in it so deeply, and we really wish the blessing of a great intimacy on every marriage, and it's important, and that's what we want to talk about tonight.
Right. So as we begin, we don't know exactly what you might be thinking when you see this up on the screen. It's an intimacy class. I announced it last week. Lots of you, it's very interesting. I announced an intimacy class, and then I got lots of people wanted to talk to me about this class this week. I don't know exactly what was happening. I think most people wanted to put an order in. Make sure you hit on this. Make sure you hit on that. So I don't know what you're thinking when you think, and while you're tuned in here to hear us talk about intimacy, but you know what? A lot of people think when the word intimacy comes up and it's going to be taught, so to speak, a lot of people want to tune in because they're really hoping that the other one is tuning in. Do you know that kind of message? Yeah. Oh, babe, we should really check this out tonight. I'm sure I have a lot to learn. If we really listen closely, maybe there's something for me.
We can all be a little guilty of that. That's true.
Yeah. And then on the other hand, we might be thinking that it's not just for the other person, but we might be thinking, oh, I'm going to tune in tonight because it's going to be lots of giggles, and it's going to be kind of naughty, and it'll be a little bit exciting and a little bit uncomfortable. And so we don't know exactly what you're thinking tonight, but we hate to disappoint you. This session tonight is probably not for them. It's probably for you. And this session tonight won't be probably as many giggles as you're hoping. You might even find that by the end of this session, you learned something. And you learned something actually really practical and really healthy. So let's talk about our physical intimacy. Let's talk about the importance of it. And let's double down on this word. We're here to say, no matter how you feel about it, that your physical relationship with each other is, and I can't point to this word enough, essential. Not just a good thing, not just something to swing by and visit once in a while, not just whenever your anniversary rolls around. It's essential for your physical, emotional, well-being. Spiritual well-being. And that brings us to our first graph here, which is, and many of you know this is sort of Psychology 101 if you took it in school, but this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, not all of you have seen this before, but I know many of you have. If you've not seen this before, this is a very good description of, well, I use this word a lot, the human condition. It's a very good description of how we all have needs. And it starts here at the bottom. The widest part of the pyramid is the most important needs that have to be met in a person's life. Once those needs are met, then they can move on to other psychological, emotional, even spiritual needs. And so you'll see here there's psychological needs at the bottom, and as you move up the rung, then safety needs become important. And if you can't guarantee any of these, then ultimately you don't move up to, family and things like that. And if you can't guarantee that, then you don't move up to your esteem and then, of course, self-actualization.
Yeah. And Kevin and I are not psychologists, by any stretch of the means.
We just play two on TV.
But when we think about our physiological beings and really, sex has very much to do with our physiological beings. And so this bottom here, if you think about air, how important it is to breathe clean air and drink clean water and have good food and shelter and good sleep and, clothing so you don't get cold. And it talks about reproduction, or you could say sexual expression. I mean, that's all part of the basic kind of how we're made, right?
Yep.
We're sexual beings made with sexual organs, and it's quite obvious how it all works. And when you have all of these things on the bottom rung satisfied, you kind of move on from there to the other. But we're not going to talk about all these things. We're just going to kind of park on the bottom basic need.
Our focus is completely elementary here. It's so obvious when we say that our physical intimacy one with another is essential. And even our friend Abraham Maslow says, look, this is where life begins.
Yep.
And there's a really good quote that we'd like to call up on the screen and just sort of read. It speaks to so many other issues in our life, but would you like me to read it?
Sure.
Okay, so this is by Robinson. It says, these psychological needs, what needs?
Physiological needs.
Is that what, yes, sorry, thank you. These physiological needs, and what physiological needs, those one on the bottom rung of Maslow's hierarchy, and included in that is our physical intimacy. Yeah. So these physiological needs are met by food, drink, recreation, sexual expression, and elimination, and if they are not met, they dominate thought and life. I want you to talk about this, Lisa, but I want to read this again for emphasis. If they are not met, they dominate thought and life. Unmet needs seem to take over in a very unhealthy way.
We've seen this so much with couples, how one couple is just dominated by just that thought of, I'm not having my...
One couple or one person in a couple?
Sorry, yes, one spouse in a couple. It feels like one of the spouses might be dominated by that thought of, I'm not satisfied in my physical intimacy, and it almost seems like the other spouse is dominated by the thought of, how can I get away from the physical intimacy aspect of the relationship? And there is, just this real tension that is sometimes unspoken, sometimes spoken, and then, discouragement sets in, and then you don't talk about it anymore. And so we want to talk about that tonight a little bit, just how important it is, and not just for the one spouse who seems to be avoiding that aspect of the relationship, but for both, because, when you're married, you're a team, so there's not one problem. There is one problem, and we're both part of that one problem.
That's a good point. That's a good point. In a lot of the marriage sessions that we're involved in, a lot of the marriage, whether they're conferences or retreats that we go to, we always feel very compelled to point out this one enduring point. And this has got so much truth wrapped up in it that it's got so much truth wrapped up in it, we're not convinced that everybody really gets it or really believes it. And that is that if your sexual expression to each other, if your physical intimacy one to another is a high priority and is being met, if each other is saying, look, I am here for you no matter what, and we're going to get to that in just a few minutes, if that is happening, then what we notice and what other observers notice is that sex and frustration with sex is not a big deal. In fact, when sexual intimacy is a high priority in the marriage, we're noticing that people don't even really think about sex that much. It's not a thought, you think about it, but it's just not an obsessive thought that's controlling your day. It's when it's unavailable. It's when it's been removed from the story. Mm-hmm. It's when it's been rooted out of the basement of that hierarchy of pyramid, that bottom layer of foundational building. Mm-hmm. When it's been removed from that, then everything else begins to crumble. And then you've got this conversation that has, I'm really frustrated. You've got this conversation, I'm really obsessed with this. I can't stop thinking about this, what I'm missing out. And a lot of times we can get frustrated with each other and say, what's the big deal? Just calm down. There's a million other things that you could be obsessing on. And when we do that, we're really missing out on the bigger story, and that is, this is actually the way God created us. And that's why our sexual expression, our sexual intimacy one with another is foundational. God made us that way. You can't forget that. And my friends, you can't grow up so much, you can't get so old that you get to remove it from your story. It's just not a possibility.
It's so true, and it can move into the so discouraged, that sort of a sad stage where you just don't think about it anymore because, that sort of doesn't seem to be available. And so you try and be happy with other things. Yeah, absolutely. And we're not talking about people with, medical issues and things that are preventing them from actually having a healthy sexual relationship, things where you might need to see a counselor or a doctor. That's not what we're talking about tonight. So please, we're full of compassion for anyone with those kinds of situations that can't be prevented, obviously. But we're just talking about between a healthy, couple who wants to have a good marriage.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, as you brought that up, Lisa, we do want to just acknowledge as well that we're deliberately using the words physical intimacy, sexual intimacy with one another, and it's not an accident. If you find yourself in the category, if for really any reason where the act of sex is somewhat challenging, for whatever reason, be it health, usually it's health related for a number of reasons, it's also our contention, and you need to hear this tonight, that there is so much more to physical intimacy than just the act of sex.
Yeah.
That's not entirely what this lesson's on tonight. And we've been really inspired by so many of our friends, so many people we've counseled who are physically in a very challenging situation, be it the inability to actually have an intimate sexual relationship the way most people define it, but they soldier on and they make these demands on themselves that we are still going to be together. We're still going to put skin on skin with one another and let the transfer of hormones and pheromones.
I love that skin on skin analogy, because I think that really is what it is about, connecting, and not just connecting like we talked about last week, but really, touch, and closeness. So that's
we're really not talking about an act. Oftentimes we are, but it's not entirely an act, right? This is about connection. This is about the way God made us. And I have been made with a responsibility to satisfy Lisa. And we don't know what our future holds. She has been made to satisfy me. Whatever our future holds, we've got to journey through that without making excuses for that very foundational layer, that very bottom layer of the pyramid. We need each other. We need our sexual, physical, intimate expression.
Absolutely.
So that's a very good point. So we move on again, and we put our slide back up here, that intimacy is what? And this is what we're banging on here. We're repeating this over and over again. Intimacy is a marriage essential service.
Absolutely.
And here is where we're coming from, especially with this idea. It seems to us in our observation that as people grow older, and as people get busier, and as people, quote unquote, and I'm going to deliberately use the air quotes here, as we mature, what we like to do is we like to surgically carve out sexuality out of our relationship. Oh, we like it and everything. Here it is. Here's my life. All of my life. It's busy, it's crazy, it's nasty, it's fun, it's vacation, it's work, it's this, it's that, it's him, it's the kids, oh, it's the bills, it's the mortgage. Does it sound like your life? There it is, all in the palm of my hand. But what we do is all of that's the holistic being, and we surgically carve out sexuality.
Why do we do that?
And we like to move it just over here. Oh, we like sexuality, and we visit it once in a while. But it's our friend that lives out in the yard.
Oh.
Or it's our person that, you know what I'm saying? And the reason is because we've gotten so mature now. We look at the world more realistically. We're not kids anymore, right? This is just a bunch of hooey. This is just a bunch of nonsense.
It doesn't make any sense at all.
It really doesn't.
Make any sense.
But it's what we're fighting against here. It's what we're fighting against with many of you who are viewing this. It's what we fight against as well.
Back to the bottom of the pyramid, like we don't do that with food and breathing.
Oh no.
And
matter of fact,
clothing.
when are you doing the groceries this week?
We're all highly aware of when we're getting groceries right now.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
Sister, let's get those groceries. You know what I mean?
What was that?
Let's pay those bills. There is so much that it's like, this must happen. And this is what we want to get to, and I'm going to revisit this in just a second, but the word essential is huge here.
Yes, yeah.
And I feel, and I don't want to get too charismatic on you right now, but I feel it inside that some of you are like, don't tell me it's essential. Don't let my husband hear that. Don't let my wife hear that. I don't want them to start thinking that this is that important. I'm sorry to tell you.
Yeah.
Maybe you should switch off. Before you switch off, subscribe to our channel. But
Please do. But we're not even saying a priority. We're saying even more than a priority.
More than a priority.
It's essential.
It's essential. Can't be lived without. What an awful thing to say. Sorry, it's Kevin and Lisa. It's what you're going to get.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what you're going to get. Let me take you on a little journey here before we start getting comments from you guys. And this journey is a bit of a spiritual overview of God's covenantal relationship with us. And the reason why I want to go on this spiritual journey is because some of you, in your defensiveness, you might be thinking, well, you're talking about Abraham Maslow, you're talking about science, I am a spiritual person, you haven't talked about God yet, so I'm not convinced. Well, okay, it's true. We talked about Abraham Maslow. Let's talk about the God of the other Abraham.
Yes.
And let's talk a little bit about his covenantal relationship with mankind. And you
This is
talk
good.
about the maturing of humans over time. Of course, in the Old Testament story, and a lot of you know this story, I'm going to go through it fast, but it might be new for you to hear this. When we go through the story, God has his people, but they are not yet totally devoted to God. And what God does is he shows up. This is with Moses. Well, this is even before that when his people are enslaved. God says, I'm going to free you. I'm going to make you my people. And God carves up this covenant with them. Yeah. The covenant word is very, very important because it matches the word that we have for marriage. And God says to his people, I'm going to marry you. I'm going to make a bond with you, a covenant, and I'm not going to leave you. And I ask you, don't leave me. But as the story goes, if those of you who've read the Old Testament, you know the story goes. And what do? They do leave God. The story of God's people as they mature is a story of adultery. It's a story of unfaithfulness where they leave God and God says, you've left me, but I will take you back again. And God's people do come back again. It's the cyclical story. And we don't wish, of course, any of that on our marriages, but it is a microcosm of the marriages that we have. At any given day, we end up leaving each other and we come back. It doesn't have to be unfaithfulness there or anything like that, but we struggle. And that's what the last 4 weeks have really all been about. Let me keep going. As God's people get more established and as God matures his people, the Israelites, he lays out some teachings that are essential for them to get through life. Now, I don't know if you've ever thought about this before. I think this is one of the most exciting sections of the Bible that we can think of. So God says to his people, if you want to make it through this life, if you want to get through this life, there are some essential things that you need to get through your life. Some things you've got to do. They are absolute musts. They need to be priorities to you. And if you are a fan of this book right here, if you open it up I bet I just slammed my microphone. Oops. If you open up this book right in the meaty middle part, you will start to find these very crucial books that God says you've got to apply these to get through life. So the first book that comes up is the book of Psalms. Actually, I just opened to it right there. And the book of Psalms is a book written and it's about songs. And here's what God's saying is he has the book of Psalms written. If you want to make it through this life, you need to learn to sing. You need to embrace song because sometimes life is going to be really great and you need to sing about it. And sometimes life is going to be really crappy and you need to be able to sing about it. So if you're going to make it through life, you've got to sing. The next book that follows that is a book on wisdom. It's the book of Proverbs where it's
one of my
common
favorite
sense.
books. Love that book.
So you don't read Proverbs and go, it's absolutely everything there is going to come true, but it's a big book of common sense. And so God says, you want to make it through this life, you've got to be able to sing. And you want to make it through this life, you've got to have some wisdom. You've got to have common sense. And common sense, as they say, isn't as common as you'd like to think it is. So God's saying, you want to make it through life, you better sing, you better have some wisdom. There's another book that comes along in this book of wisdom, these books of wisdom as well. It's called the book of Ecclesiastes. Yes. And that's a book, what? A book of meaning. If you want to make it through this life, your life better have meaning. And this is where Solomon writes that everything we chase after, and now with this pandemic I talked about on Sunday, everything we've chased after is wobbling right now. And what does he say about that?
Meaningless. It's all meaningless.
Meaningless. Everything is meaningless. And at the end of his book,
except for
he says God. What? What's the most important thing, your important thing in life should be?
Fear God.
Fear God. Keep his commandments. Focus on the most important things in life. Beautiful. Your life needs to have meaning. Okay, let me summarize. You're like, I think he's preaching. You're right. Yeah. Here we go. If you want to have, this is what God's saying, you want to mature as a people, you want to go through life, you've got to sing. You want to go through life, you've got to have wisdom. You want to go through life, your life better have meaning. And there's a fourth book.
Oh, wow.
Do you know what the fourth book is? Song of Songs. It's a book it's a poetic book about erotic, passionate, sensual, physical love, one person to another, man to a woman. Can you believe in the history of humankind?
Is God not awesome? That is so awesome.
In the history of humankind, God said, you want to make it through life? Let me give you the four things that you are going to need.
Yeah.
You better sing. You better have wisdom in your life. You better have meaning in your life. Yeah. And you better have a proper, healthy, balanced view of sexual intimacy. So
Beautiful.
forgive me for going off on that. But this is where we were saying before when we were looking at Maslow's stuff, and this is physiological stuff and psychological stuff, and some of you are like, I don't really know about that. Tell me more about God. Hey, God matches Abraham Maslow to a T, foundational, fundamental.
I think Maslow got whatever he got from God, actually.
I think so. I think so.
That's awesome. So amazing. You know, when we first were married, Kevin and I, in our very first year of marriage, we learned such an important lesson about the essentialness.
Can we read a scripture before you tell this story?
Sure.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
You know how we talked about, we just referenced this Song of Songs, which...
You looked at me, so I thought I was supposed to start talking there.
Honey, I can't help but look at you. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. There's the scripture.
So here's the Song of Songs scripture that we want to look at before Lisa tells you this really great life lesson and before we finish off. Now, I don't think you'll be able to see this, especially if you're watching on a small phone right now. If you're casting on your TV, maybe you can. But this is from Song of Songs, chapter 8 and verse 6. And this is such a powerful, and this is from the erotic, sensual book in the Bible. The book that, by the way, Hebrew boys were not allowed to read. They kept the boys from reading until they were able to get married, or at least until they grew older, because it's just such an exciting book. And it's a very contextual book, and it's a very cultural book as well. You may read it today.
You might want to get a commentary.
And you should read it today. I highly recommend you reading it today. But just because, maybe you don't get moved as much when someone refers to your teeth as a flock of goats, but that was the culture at the time. But you can't help but read into it the passion, the love, and the sexuality that's in here. But we wanted to choose this passage to read to you to make this one point. And this is from Song of Songs, chapter 8 and verse 6. And it says, to place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm. For love is strong as death, its jealousy unyielding as the grave. It burns like blazing fire, like a mighty flame. Many waters cannot quench love, rivers cannot sweep it away. If one were to give all the wealth of one's house for love, it would be utterly scorned. There's so much just in this passage alone, in this short book of Song of Songs, which we'll probably visit in following weeks. I just wanted to talk about this first word, and it's used twice. Place me like a seal. This is not the aquatic mammal, or it's not a seal like that. At this time in history, a person's seal was everything in their life. When they put a seal on something, it was their most prized possession. It was their essential. It was their number one in their life. And what the book of Song of Songs is about is two people saying our intimacy has our seal on it. Our intimacy, no matter where it's at. We've not been doing very good at it. Doesn't really matter. Our seal, the most important thing in our life, is our physical intimacy one to another. We put our seal on it. We say that. We stake that claim, and we say to the world and to ourselves, it's the number one thing. And I just want to say to us and give us this challenge. Anything that is your essential, you make it happen. If you have bills to pay this week, and it's an essential, you just make it happen. You don't even really complain about it that much. Or if you do, you complain about it and still make it happen. It's an essential. If you need to get groceries this week, it's an essential. Back before the pandemic, when your kids needed to be somewhere on time, grumble, 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 but it was essential. You made it happen. I'm wondering tonight if you can hear the biggest challenge. Your intimate relationship with your spouse is your seal, or it should be the essential relationship. Thank you for listening to that, and I want Lisa to tell you this last story.
Yeah, so when we were first married, in our first year of marriage actually, we had an incredible experience where we were able to be ministers to a congregation, even though we were so young. And in that congregation was a couple who had been married for 40 years, and we're in our first year of marriage.
40.
And they wanted to come to us, their new, ministers in their church, to get marriage counseling.
Think about it.
Which was crazy.
40 years.
So
half
we
a
had
year.
them over to our house, and I cooked a big dinner. I had not done a lot of entertaining, but this was a big deal. I'd set the table beautifully, and they came over. And Kevin said, let's talk about the marriage stuff first before we eat. So we sat down on the couch and started talking about their marriage and the issues that they were going through. And it got so challenging for them and heated that they just up and stormed out of our house. And the food was right there, ready to put on the table.
There we were.
And we were just looking at each other like, well, we are the worst marriage counselors in the whole wide world. This is terrible. We failed.
Yep.
And I remember the next day I talked to the wife and I said, is everything okay? I feel terrible and, couldn't get a hold of you last night. And she said, oh, no, everything's great. We went home and we made love and everything's fine now. And we were like so happy. We hadn't caused a divorce in our church. And I'm exaggerating, but the beautiful thing to me about that story is just that, that couple, and to this day, they know where the seal, however that scripture went, they are each other's seal. They have placed their seal a long time ago. In fact, they're watching tonight, and they actually just celebrated their 70th wedding anniversary.
Guys,
crazy.
Listen to that.
They have 45 children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. Amazing couple, just amazing, who understand that our physical, sexual relationship, which God created for husbands and wives to enjoy, is an essential part of our relationship.
We're the luckiest people in the world. 30 years ago, when we were newlyweds ourselves, we sat down with a couple who in their humility said, we need some help with our marriage. They showed up at our house. It was crazy, and they taught us probably one of the most important life lessons for marriage that we've ever had taught to us.
Yes, they're our goal, and we love them so much.
And they just realized, look, there's a lot of problems, but us not being intimate with each other will not be one of them. This too will pass, but each other, we're going to place a seal on our hearts. And so they taught us 30 years ago, and I'm sorry, say it again. What anniversary, what year are they in?
They just celebrated their 70th wedding anniversary.
Years, and they're going strong.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. We're not going to name you. We don't want to embarrass you, but it's great to see you here.
And thank you for allowing us to share that story.
And thank you for changing our lives with it.
In advance that we could.
And what's the whole all about? What's the so what of tonight? Intimacy isn't a good thing. Intimacy isn't what you look forward to. Well, it can be, of course, but intimacy isn't all that. Intimacy, my friends, make this your goal. It's an essential service in your marriage. That's all we've got for you tonight.
Okay.
So if you have any questions for us in the last 10 minutes we've got, we'll try to answer them. If you don't, that's fine too. If you need to log off and run away to the bedroom, that's fine. Just please subscribe on the YouTube channel before you go.
Oh, yes, please do that. That helps us a lot if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. They're just amazed at
70
years.
70 years.
All the comments are just kind of congratulations.
You talk about hashtag goals, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
This couple's awesome.
Yeah.
They're some of our favorite people.
Yeah. So what questions can you think of,
Do you think
Kevin?
we'll have 70 years? I think if we keep doing these every Monday night, I'm not going to live much longer than next week. So I don't know if we're going to make it.
We're going to be 30.
But we're going to have a lot of fun, though, between now and whatever we get.
Yes,
right?
for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any questions, please put them in the chat. It's kind of hard to ask questions about that, you know,
Yeah,
like,
like,
so why don't we just let everyone go and have a great night?
Yeah, well, there's that. There's that. Yeah, we could do that. So let's do that. We want to thank you for being able to be with us
Are
here
there
tonight.
resources you can recommend? That's a great question. And
I was just being a news anchor and signing off, but you brought
okay,
up
maybe
some resources.
weeks following we'll have some resources to share.
Yeah, do you think they're talking specifically about items to read or books or things like that?
Well, that's what I was thinking. Are there resources you can recommend?
Yeah, well, listen, if you know Lisa and I, and you've hung around us very long, you'll know, you'll be familiar with this statement, but we personally believe when it comes to our marriage, even our physical relationship, that it is a priority, and if anything is a priority, we do spend time focusing on it. And I'm not just talking about me focusing on her, I'm talking about, listen, if you're crazy about sports, you wake up every day and you tune into sports, you know, you tune into the network and you see what happened. If you're crazy about business and that's your thing, you tune into the channels and you watch that weird little thing run across the bottom, and apparently that means something to you. If you're crazy about pottery, every day you wake up and you tune into something to do with pottery. If this is the seal in your life, if this is important, then I think you should be getting your hands on anything that you can read. I know Lisa and I certainly myself, I read at least one book a year on marriage and intimacy.
And I read a lot more.
And Lisa does a lot more.
Yes.
Why? Because it's important to us. We feel really confident about our intimate relationship with one another. We're not insecure about it at all. In fact, look at us here, but we still think it needs to be a priority, so we make it our priority. We don't read those books for you. We don't read them because we do marriage classes or anything like that. So I'd really strongly encourage you to look for some of those books. Most of them we read are faith-based, but not all entirely. And I think that's a good place to start as well.
Okay. And this question has come up before. I don't think we answered it, about just couples living in separate countries. That's an interesting.
Well, I know why we didn't answer it. That's a really tough question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not ideal for a marriage, for sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what we're going through right now with the pandemic, there's been so much, trying to connect with people through technology. And so obviously you want to be very in great communication with your spouse as much as possible, so you don't miss a beat in what's going on in your lives. But that's challenging. That's really challenging.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm comfortable just kind of saying everything on here is going to sort of linger on the YouTube channel for years and years and years. But I would really suggest for anyone who's in that situation, you need to get some people to come alongside you as well. Some people who are very wise themselves, people who take seriously faith and the Word of God, so they could come alongside you and give you some much needed advice if you're in this situation. It's the easy thing to say is, can you remedy that situation as soon as possible? Of course. But that's not always as easily done as it's simply said. So I would really encourage you to Get those people around you who are people of faith, who are people who can be trusted and good friends to help you journey there to kind of answer some of those very deep and very challenging questions.
And I see in the chat some people are giving resources, which is great. I think that's great if people wanted to share their favorite resources there. Yeah, I see a few. Yeah.
So, listen, it's 8:25. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to leave them wanting more instead of
I think that's a great idea.
Over-promising and under-delivering. We're going to under whatever that saying is. We'll just try to do that.
We ended our first one early, so
did we? Well, good for us. Pat on the back. So we're going to be back next week for Marriage Monday. We're going to talk a little bit more about intimacy. So if you want, before you sign off here, let me remind you one last time, what's the so what about tonight? What was your main point tonight? I'm not sure what you were getting at. Here's what it is. The word intimacy and the word essential. If you can remember those two things, if you can write them down somewhere, put them in your phone, or as your screen, use on your screensaver, the intimacy that you need with this person that you love isn't just a really important thing, it's an essential thing.
So come back and we'll cover more on that subject.
7 days from now. Listen, I know you're tired of hearing this, but if you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so. It doesn't only help you and reminds you, but it also helps our congregation here, the Toronto Church of Christ. So please do that before you go. Thanks everybody for being here. We feel honored, privileged, and a little bit strange to be able to talk to you tonight, but we're thankful for the opportunity. Lisa, thanks so much. High five. See you next week on Marriage Monday.